a decade ago to try to reform and keep our system of elections fair and transparent. And, you know, so I have a lot of, I'm very appreciative of Linda and Ruth and the work that they've done. And frankly, they've done that work without pay. This is something they do because they love it, because they're concerned about our country. If you are frustrated with the outcome of the election, believe me, Linda and Ruth are extremely frustrated. And I came into this late. You know, as most of you know, I ran for Attorney General in 2018. And it was after that election, looking at how the votes came in and how on election night, we would be winning in a jurisdiction, and then in the next 30 days, we go from up 5 points to down by 5 points. It just amazed me that the vote could come in and then suddenly we would lose after election day. And that occurred in my race and in a number of other races. I'm not suggesting to you that I would have been Attorney General today, but it didn't follow the traditional patterns. Traditionally, the vote that came in on or before Election Day would trend generally the same after Election Day. So if you were down, you could expect to be down when the vote was finally tallied. But in 2018, suddenly we started seeing where you could be up on Election Day. The mail-in ballots that had come in prior to the election, when they were counted, the voters who went to the poll on Election Day, those votes would give you an indication you think you're doing well. And then suddenly in the next 14 days, ballots are either found, ballots suddenly show up in the election offices, and that raised significant concerns because as Linda and Ruth would tell you, they began to notice this trend back in 2016. But 2018 was a wave election for Democrats. They had perfected the art of ballot harvesting. They had also perfected the art of registration, and it wasn't always citizens that they were registering. And we became particularly concerned. And one of the things that Linda asked me to do in 2019 was a series of public records requests from registrars around the state of California. And what we were specifically looking for in those records requests was the policies and procedures that registrars were using to conduct our elections, because we felt that if we could understand what the policies were, we would then be able to better monitor elections in 2020. What we got back from a number of registrars was very little information, and that caused us to first file suit in Ventura County because our election observers had been basically excluded from being able to get close enough to see how the signatures were being verified. We weren't able to see the reprocessing of ballots when a ballot was destroyed or mangled and wouldn't go through the counting machine. So we sued in Ventura County. That case was heard in September for injunctive relief. The county came in and promised us that in 2020, our observers would be able to be close enough to observe. We would be able to see what was happening. We would be able to monitor the reprocessing of ballots, all kinds of promises being made in Ventura County. And as you might guess, none of that came to fruition at election day. We also sued in Fresno County in 2019. And what we were seeking in Fresno County was access to provisional ballot envelopes, not the actual ballots. We didn't want to go in and tamper with ballots. We were looking for provisional ballot envelopes and the mail-in envelopes. There had been some adverse case law out of San Diego, but we felt that in Fresno County, we would have a more conservative court. We would have a better shot at being able to get access to that material. We were not successful in Fresno. The court granted a demur to our complaint. And so we were unable at that time to be able to go forward and pursue an analysis of the ballots that had come in. We were unable to compare signatures, and we felt that that was a significant problem. So to get around that and to be able to identify all the different issues, we finally came to the conclusion that we needed two things in election integrity. One, we needed to bring in additional lawyers, that the project was too big for the group that we had that were working on state litigation. And so we did some fundraising, some significant fundraising, both here in the state and nationally, and brought in enough money to hire the firm of Primary Law Group. It's a medium-sized law firm, but it has more resources than we were able to muster as lawyers. Frankly, you know, our team that I had put together back in 2019 were the first lawyers that Linda and Ruth and Election Integrity Project had ever had that were working primarily on their issues. So we brought in Primary Law Group out of Los Angeles, and on January the 4th of 2021, we filed an action titled Election Integrity Project California versus Padilla. It's been assigned to the Central or the Western Division in Los Angeles of the Central District of California. And we specifically chose the federal court for the following reasons. One, we felt that we wanted to sue under federal constitutional provisions, also federal election provisions, because we thought that in the federal court, we would get a better examination of all the various issues that need to be examined in California. And specifically, some of those issues are, we need to be able to attack the issue of signature verification. As some of you know, the Secretary of State, as far back as 2016, had been under a requirement that he promulgate regulations on signature verification so that we would know how they were examining signatures to ensure that only the voter who was registered was voting. Well, what we got out of Padilla was a regulation about 6 weeks before Election Day 2020 that essentially gutted the provision for signature verification. Specifically, the new regulation said that the only way a signature would be rejected is if two election officials meeting together found beyond a reasonable doubt that the signature was not that of a voter. Well, any of you who have been on jury duty on a criminal case know what the standard of beyond a reasonable doubt is. It's the highest standard that can possibly be raised, meaning that if the two election officials didn't agree beyond this standard, together agree, then the signature would be accepted. Well, essentially that meant that there was no signature verification that would be conducted in the 2020 election. Anyone who's gone back to look at the election results know that there were at least 3 million additional ballots cast over and above what was cast in 2018. Significant increases for the Democrats, significant, by the way, increases in vote for Donald Trump. He got almost 2 million more votes in 2020 than he got in 2016. That, I guess, bodes well that we were able to turn out more Republican votes. But unfortunately, it also indicates that we have tens of thousands of ballots being mailed out in the last election that were being returned. And there's no way of being able to determine whether those individuals that returned a ballot were the individuals who had been registered, or whether they registered multiple locations or voted multiple times. In some of the analysis that was done prior to the election, we found some 450,000 voters who received mail-in ballots, but who hadn't voted in over 10 years. And we had demanded that those demanded through a letter to the Secretary of State back in August that they clean the voter file. And of course, they didn't clean any voter files. They just simply mailed ballots out to people. There were individuals receiving 3, 4, 5 ballots. There's no excuse for that. And under federal law, the state is mandated to maintain up-to-date, verifiable voter files. We felt that we wouldn't get a fair shake in state court, so the federal court was the location to go. Moreover, during the course of our examination and observation of the ballots, we found in some counties, and in particular in Ventura County, that the Dominion system was suspect. Now, many of you have, heard the arguments that have been raised against the Dominion voting system on the East Coast, but we have video evidence here in California of unexplained occurrences taking place. For example, on Election Day 2020, at approximately 4:30 in the afternoon, our observers in Ventura County observed a Dominion employee taking a flash drive out of a laptop that he'd been working on, giving it to a county employee in Ventura County who inserted the flash drive into one of the servers. After a few minutes, that flash drive was then removed from the server, given back to the Dominion employee, and no explanation and no recalibration of the equipment. There may be an innocent explanation for that, except there's been no explanation by election officials in Ventura County. That's part of the lawsuit that's been brought by Election Integrity. In multiple counties, observers, including Ventura and Orange and Fresno and Santa Clara, observers were placed in locations where they were not able to view either signature verification, if you assumed that there was signature verification, nor were they given access to watch the remaking of damaged or destroyed ballots. As most of you probably know, when a mail-in ballot comes in and it has been marked incorrectly, maybe it has a mark in a place that it shouldn't have, the vote counting machine will kick that ballot out. And that ballot is then taken to a separate location where the ballot is remade. Essentially, one person on one side of the table takes that ballot, reads the ballot to a person on the other side. That person then marks a clean, fresh ballot, which is then given back to the vote counters who run it through the equipment. It's critical that someone observe what's going on in the remake of ballots. There are literally thousands of ballots statewide that are remade in each election. Maybe as many as tens of thousands of ballots being remade, depending on, how many damaged, destroyed ballots come into the election official. And without the ability of observers to be able to see what's happening during the course of that, of the remaking, there's no way to be certain that the ballots are in fact being read correctly or being marked correctly. And our observers were restricted from being able to see what was happening. In most cases, they weren't even allowed close enough to those rooms where the ballots were being remade for any type of observation to take place. That's part of our lawsuit. Moreover, California law now allows an individual to put multiple ballots into one envelope, put in note cards and saying, I want to vote for Joe Biden, and have those note cards and those multiple ballots that are in the envelope be counted. And we believe that one is unconstitutional, violates federal law specifically, and we want to have the federal court declare that and these other procedures that have been used, that are being used in California, and some of these procedures have been used for a number of years, declared unconstitutional under federal constitutional law. This is a lawsuit that is distinct from the Trump lawsuits that were filed in other states. And we won't really want to keep it as distinct. We don't want to get wrapped up in the fighting that's going on the East Coast. Now, we've sent out our own press releases. We've let people know that the suit has been filed, but what we're doing, we've provided information to the Sidney Powell teams and people on the East Coast, but really this is a standalone lawsuit. And the reason I bring that up is because it's a standalone lawsuit and one that's going to the heart of transparency and election integrity. There's nothing more important now than supporting Election Integrity Project California. They need the funding. It is not cheap to support lawyers. And while our team that worked with the Election Integrity Project, we worked essentially lo bono, it costs more when you get a larger law firm. And so the fees being paid to Primary Law Group are more than would have been paid to us, but we simply didn't have the capacity and ability to be able to take on a lawsuit of this size and be able to give it the attention necessary. So anything you can do to help election integrity by going on their website, making donations, they need the help. and they're going to need the help coming up because the real paper war is beginning now. The counties and the state are making what is called a 12B motion, a motion to strike. This is the first thing that the defendants do in almost every one of these lawsuits. If we get past that stage, and I think we have an excellent shot at getting past that stage, if we have the resources, at that point, we move into discovery, and we'll be able to bring the forensic teams in. We'll be able to bring the experts in to take a look at equipment such as the Dominion equipment, to analyze the Smartmatic software that Los Angeles County uses. And more importantly, we'll be able to affirm the California provisions that allow our observers to truly be able to observe what happens in the election. And so I encourage you to get on that website, help any way you can, get others to come in and support the efforts of Election Integrity Project. They are critical to affirming our constitutional right to a republic and our constitutional rights as citizens to be able to vote for our elected leaders. So with that, I'm going to move on to a separate topic, because at the same time we were working closely with Election Integrity Project, my lawyers also work closely with the California Constitutional Rights Foundation. And the California Constitutional Rights Foundation is also a 501c3, but our focus is on political rights, freedom of speech, free expression, and freedom of association. Those are issues that are different and distinct from what Election Integrity Project does, do not overlap. What we have done over the last year is we've been very active in the COVID fight and the governor's restrictions on businesses, restaurants, gyms, and just people in general. Back in May of 2020, we volunteered after 31 individuals who violated the governor's prohibition against protesting his orders. 31 individuals were arrested at the Capitol, and all they were doing, they may have been noisy, but they weren't breaking windows and they weren't attacking police, but they were arrested because they didn't have a permit to congregate on the grounds of the Capitol. Any of you that have been down to the state Capitol recently will note that there is a chain link fence that now surrounds the Capitol. The People's House is now not available to the people. And it's been brought on by Gavin Newsom and his desire to impose almost dictatorial edicts. When we took on that project, we took it on for free because it was my belief and the other lawyers on the team that a person ought to have the right to congregate and express their opinion, even when their opinion disagreed with that of the governor. And as many of you know and remember, back in March and early April, we were being told by both the president and the CDC and the governor that what we were doing was bending the curve, that our goal was not to stamp out the virus, which we all know, and particularly I have to put myself into that age group, can be quite serious if you get the virus. And, some people, get come down with pneumonia and other sicknesses, and can be a killer. But at the same time, being back in March and April, we were being told that we were trying to bend the curve. Well, by May, the curve certainly had been bent. People wanted to come out of their homes again, and a group went down to the Capitol to protest and ask the governor to free the citizens of California. In response, he had the Highway Patrol arrest 31 of them. We took those 31 cases on for free, representing those individuals that had been arrested at the Capitol. And after a short period of time and some work with the district attorney in Sacramento, all those charges were dropped. Well, that led us into working with a number of restaurants around the state, including restaurants in Nevada County. In Nevada County, the county was aggressively trying to maintain strict closure on restaurants. And in some cases, they were stricter than the governor's orders. We were able to work with the county in July and early August to get those restaurants reopened. But we knew that come wintertime, those restaurants would be in a world of hurt, because Nevada County is right at the snow line, and particularly Nevada City and Truckee, which are both in the same county. The snow line is basically at Nevada City. And when the snow comes, there's no sitting outside. And so realizing that, on November the 11th, we filed suit on behalf of restaurants in the Eastern District of California on behalf of the Nevada County Restaurant Coalition and some named plaintiffs, alleging a number of constitutional claims, including violation of due process, equal protection. Restaurants were being closed, but you could go down to the grocery store or a big box store and congregate there, and nobody seemed to have a problem with that. The governor, in response, originally the lawsuit had been framed as a Nevada County lawsuit, focused directly on the impacts of the governor's rules and regulations on Nevada County. But as soon as we filed, within roughly a week, the governor made it a regional issue. And if you remember, the governor's reason for regionalizing it was not only that the infection rate was going up, but there was going to be an increase in the ICU rate, and that the ICUs would lack the capacity. And if you remember, he and others went on the air and said that there was zero capacity in ICU throughout California. Well, the reality was we were never at zero capacity. Zero capacity at the Department of Health's level, they decided was 15%. So if they had 15% of the beds available, they were at zero capacity. In some jurisdictions, you had reports of capacity in ICU at 140, 50, 60, 180%. Well, what that meant was that every time when they ran out of licensed beds, hospitals would simply open up more beds. We thought, and still do, that doesn't really follow the science. If you're going to tell people that there's no ICU capacity, you ought to tell them the truth. And more importantly, you shouldn't be telling judges that there's zero capacity when there is significant capacity. Well, as most of you remember, in January, all of a sudden, when the recall starts gaining steam and the public starts saying we're fed up with the lying, the cheating, the inconsistency, after the governor goes to the French Laundry in Napa and keeps his own winery open while he closes everybody else, the public became fed up and disgusted with this governor. His poll numbers began to tank, and the recall took off. And as we look at the science, the following of the science, as we've been admonished numerous times by the politicians in Sacramento, suddenly the science didn't mean anything, and we went and jettisoned the ICU capacity argument because he was lying there, and it suddenly became everybody went to purple tier, which is still the most restricted tier, and one that restaurants really can't sustain for long. But the governor changed his edicts, and suddenly we were reopened for outside dining. Well, those of you that live up in country that might be considered snow country realize that didn't do anything for restaurants in those areas, because you can't sit outside when it's 32 degrees or 25 degrees and eat. And so we've pursued our litigation. We're in the 12B process right now in federal court. We are hopeful that we're going to come out of that process, at which point we will then press the governor to get our case into trial. In addition, in Mammoth, California, Mammoth Lakes, we've filed suit on the 2nd of February, actually the 3rd of February. We filed suit in the Eastern District of California on behalf of lodging property owners, people that own condos and homes in the Mammoth Lake area were being told that they couldn't even visit their property, let alone rent it. So we sued the county of Mono. We sued the city or the town of Mammoth Lakes over its enforcement policies, as well as the governor, because you have a right here in California and the United States to make use of your property, private property. And what effectively was happening is by regulatory fiat, the town of Mammoth and the governor and his public health people were preventing people from even using the property that they were paying mortgages on, let alone they were being prohibited from renting it to anyone, including the essential employees that the governor said should be able to move around the state and rent their property. So that lawsuit has been served. We've served it on city officials in the town of Mammoth, and we're moving forward on that lawsuit, preparing to seek injunctive relief and force the state and the city and county to allow people to utilize the property that they own. We also are representing a group of restaurants, gyms, and others in San Diego. In about a week, we're going to bring a lawsuit in federal court in the Southern District of California that's very similar to the one we brought on behalf of Nevada County. It'll simply represent more different types of businesses. The same constitutional questions are raised, lack of due process, equal protection. And in each of these lawsuits, one of the big hammers that we have is that we've raised the Fifth Amendment takings claim. Government can't take your private property either by regulation or just simply by taking it from you without just compensation. And we want to send a message to governments that if you're going to engage in the taking of people's private property, you are going to pay for it. And we're hopeful that that's going to get everybody's attention, and that we'll be able to, through the courts, get an order that lifts the restrictions that we've been forced to put up with. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't go, have health requirements and protections in the law. And, I'm not a mask person. I don't believe in it personally, but, there are some things that we can endure. But this idea that we're going to lock you in your house and then let the prisoners out of prison is ridiculous, uncalled for, and frankly unconstitutional. So with that, I'm going to move on to my last point, and then I can take questions on any of these other two. But as many of you know, I did run for Attorney General in 2018. We've put together an exploratory committee for 2022. In 2018, I was able to secure about 4.5 million votes in California. That was about what Donald Trump had taken in 2016. In 2022, we're gunning to win. And why do we think we have an opportunity to win? Because the Democrats in California, and the top Democrat being Gavin Newsom, have so mismanaged the state, and his attorney general, who, by the way, has been selected to flee California back to Washington, where he actually lives, to be the Health and Human Services Secretary. We expect that there's going to be someone new appointed. The two names that are being floated right now are Adam Schiff of Russia hoax fame, and an obscure assemblyman from Alameda County named Bonta, and sorry, I don't remember his first name, but those are the two people that are being put forward as we speak to take over the spot once Javier Becerra leaves. Now, the Republicans in the United States Senate don't believe Becerra is qualified to take over HHS. So we expect that it's going to take several months, maybe June or July, before the governor can make an appointment. Now, at that point, he may well be in the middle of a recall election. I don't know what he will do. I would assume that he will make an appointment to try to fill that spot before he's voted out of office and a Republican is elected governor of California. But under any circumstances, the recall election is going to demonstrate and prove to the electorate in California that the Democrats aren't qualified to maintain control. Better yet, if we elect a Republican, as I expect, once this recall is qualified, we will then have a Republican at the top of the ticket. The second most important office for you is who occupies the office of Attorney General. The Attorney General represents the state of California in all of the legal action that goes forward into the courts, both on the federal level and on the state level. And in fact, when California is sued and it goes to the Supreme Court of the United States, it's the Attorney General and the Attorney General's solicitor that represents the state of California back in Washington. So it's an incredibly important post that when we elect a Republican governor, we need to have a Republican Attorney General elected in 2022. We've got to have someone that will stand up and defend our governor's policies. Or in the alternative, if Gavin Newsom's still there, we've got to have a Republican as Attorney General to be able to attack and uphold the people's right to freedom, the people's rights under the California Constitution and the United States Constitution, and only the Attorney General can do that on behalf of the people of California. So that becomes critically important, both to our next Republican governor of California, or if it's, for some reason we have a Democrat in 2022, we need a Republican Attorney General. And that's why, I'm focused on running for California Attorney General again. We think that we've got an organization statewide. We've got to raise more money than we did in 2018. I've been around talking to individuals, community leaders, Republican Party leaders throughout the state about the 2022 election. We're in the exploratory phase at this time. There are reasons to stay in the exploratory stage until towards the end of this year, but we do have a website up that you can go to. It's www.baileyforag.com. There is a portal there. Contributions are greatly solicited. Endorsements are solicited. If you go on the website, you can sign up. We can then keep you posted on what's going on campaign-wise. 2022, I believe, as opposed to 2018, that was a Democrat wave. I think we're going to take the House back in 2022. We're going to take the Senate back in 2022. And we have a great opportunity, maybe the best in the next decade, to take statewide offices here in the state of California, and I believe hold the governorship in 2022. And so with that, I will open it to questions on any of the topics or any other topic you might have.
Your Honor, Stephen?
Yes.
I agree with everything you say, except I can't get it through my head how we can possibly win another election knowing the amount of fraud, knowing the amount of fraud and evidence that was brought before the courts. The courts refused to listen to the evidence. The evidence is so in our face, it's almost undisputable. It's only going to get worse. These Dominion machines, it just came out today on the Gateway Pundits in New Hampshire, all 4 Republicans there were miscalculated by over 300 votes exactly, all because of Dominion machines. If we can't fix this election system, if we can't get rid of these Dominion machines and the Smartmatic, as well as there's other machines. There's a video out that I put up in 2017 where the original voting machines were hacked in less than 7 minutes by an IT guy that never seen a machine before. But in 7 minutes, he was able to hack that machine and change the outcome of the votes. In addition to that, we have these other machines besides the Dominion machines and the Smartmatic software and so forth that have been known to be just as bad as Dominion machines. We don't know what counties they're in. So it's frustrating to me, as much as I would love to see you, Secretary of State, Governor, Vice President, I would love it. You're probably one of the few people on earth that I actually trust. But how do we get you elected with all this fraud going on? The amount, no matter how much money we raise, no matter how many votes we bring in, if these Dominion machines switch those votes, we lost. What can we do? My only
Dan,
suggestion, if I can make a suggestion, we have to have a PR campaign and explain to people with video, getting on news sources, getting it out there any way we can that the system is rigged and the courts are crooked. Those two things right there are stealing our freedom. If we can't fix those, we lost our country. So,
Dan, you're exactly right. But we can't, at the end of the day, we can give up and turn it over to the progressives because they've perfected the art of fraud. Now, I'm not suggesting that we learn to cheat better than they, but we used to think that we needed to be 5% better than the Democrats to account for the fraud that was taking place. My guess is we now have to be 10% better. But there are things we can do here in California, nationally, to turn things around. The lawsuit by Election Integrity Project goes directly to the heart of the Dominion equipment. We have, it's not, when I told you about what happened in Ventura County, where we had observers that were standing and watching, we have that on videotape. So we actually, because they were trying as hard as they could to keep our observers as far away as possible, they put everything on a television screen so you could watch it on TV. And when we saw what was happening in Ventura County, we had our observers actually videotape what was going on. So it's not that we're having people come in to testify. We can literally show to the court what happened in Ventura County. And that was Dominion equipment, Dominion employees, and county employees working together. So I think at the end of the day, the election integrity suit, if any lawsuit in the United States has the opportunity to move forward and be successful, it's the lawsuit that election integrity has put together. Not only that, election integrity has reams of investigative reports from observers who are actual witnesses that we can bring into court to testify. Again, nobody else in the country has the decades worth of experience, has the reports that have been put together. So that lawsuit is critical, and I have every expectation that in the end, we're going to be successful. I can't tell you that every last cause of action is going to be successful, but I'll tell you, we've done a lot of work and we've put together a legal team that I think it's not one that's flashy. It isn't one that's trying to go out and get on Fox News every day. And in fact, if we can stay out of the national news, that's even better for us. We're doing the tough work, the slog that has to take place to be able to change what happens in California. And when you change what happens in California, you change the whole country. Now, how do we, do better than the Democrats in 2022? We got to make sure that we're getting the evangelicals out to vote. Half of those people don't register and don't vote. So number one, we've got to redouble our efforts to be better at electioneering than the Democrats are. They've perfected the ballot harvesting. We've got to perfect it too, but we've got to get our vote out. And where can we go? But we can go to the churches. Secondly, Trump turned out 2 million more Republicans in 2020 than we're able to turn out in 2018. We need to turn those 2 million votes out. On $800,000, I got 4.5 million votes, as much as Trump got in 2016. We've got to do better in 2022, and we can do better. And Donald Trump proved that we can do better. 6.5 million votes. If we turn out 6.5 million votes, we're competitive in California. $800,000, though, isn't going to be able to get the message out. We've got to get the message out to the voters of California. We're going to have to raise more money in the 2022 election cycle than we did in 2018. And if we do those types of things, we can win in California. There is a pathway to victory. We need to register more Republicans in California. We can't be hoping that by osmosis, people are going to go out and vote for Republican candidates. We can't be at 21% and expect that we're going to be able to get 100% of the no party preference. You know, the no party preference and the Republican vote, if everybody turned out and everybody voted for the Republican candidate, we'd take 51% of the vote. In 2022, we've got to get our registration percentages up, because Republicans vote for Republicans. At that point, we can then be assured, if we get our registration up in California, we can be assured that our candidates can go out and begin to message to the no party preference, and we can beat the Democrats at their own game. But we can't do it by sitting back, collecting a big paycheck as chairman of the party, and then pretending like everything's going great, because it's not going great. I agree with you completely, Dan, that it's a tough road to go. But if we give up and we don't go out and continue to fight, if California's bad now, it's going to get worse. Worse yet, it's going to export how corrupt and crooked it is to the other 49 states.
Judge,